Hello everyone. Welcome to the first of our Florida Friendly Landscaping virtual Lunch and Learn series here in Miami-Dade County. We're going to jump into it since it's that time of year when our migratory birds start to arrive. So today we're going to talk about what you can plant, how you can create habitat in your backyard, and invite some of these beautiful creatures in to stay in your yard. So first we want to say they're going to come to a Florida friendly landscape, and we want to encourage everybody to create a Florida friendly landscape. The program is now 30 years old. There you can sign the pledge, you can join the celebration, you can look at all the 9 principles. There's even a really good video on how to adapt a standard landscape into a Florida friendly landscaping. You can do it step by step. Everybody can have Florida friendly. So here are those 9 principles which the program is based on. You can see that we start with right plant, right place. And if you gain plant knowledge, you can you can make everything else seem like a snap. Getting the right plants in the right place automatically means you're going to attract wildlife. Knowing what plants need and getting it in that spot where it's going to thrive, you're going to increase water efficiency. You're going to have less pests because you're not going to pick pest prone, etc., etc. So we'll leave this for you to explore, and maybe we'll go through each of these in future presentations. So let's look at attracting wildlife guidance. What to provide, what to plant, and there we go, right plant, right place again. So we want to make sure that we have everything that wildlife needs, and everything needs water to survive, and they need clean water to survive. So in this case, you want to have a water source in the landscape, and if you're using a bird bath, we just want to caution that you should clean that out every 3 to 4 days to prevent mosquitoes from laying eggs, and make sure shelters exist. So what kind of shelters besides making sure that you have a variety of trees? You want to have vertical layering, a nice thick shrub for different birds to jump into, but you also want to make sure maybe you need bird houses or you have bat houses. You want to make snags. You want to leave the trees that are not a hazard where they're going to fall on your house, but something maybe that let's say a woodpecker can peck a hole through and build a nest in there. Brush piles are going to be good things for birds to pick up twigs and things like that to build a nest out of. So what to plant? We want plants that provide habitat, shelter, and or food sources. So they can do all of the above. You can have shrubs that are thick for one of a bird to just dart back into and hide from a predator. Maybe they're on that shrub, they're eating the berries or they're eating the seeds. They can do dual duties. And in the case of why would we want to plant host and nectar plants for butterflies? Well, and for moths and for all other pollinators, because a lot of their birds, even though they may be eating seeds off of plants or berries, when they are nesting and they feed their young, 90% of what they feed their young is going to be insects, nice, fat, juicy protein. So having the sources around for those pollinators, there's going to be plenty of them. There'll be more than enough for the birds. And hummingbirds are going to also want to nectar. So you'll find that many of the plants that are host plants and nectar plants for butterflies, they're going to be our native plants. So again, this is install plants including natives. Our natives produce faithfully this time of year. They'll have fruit that's going to turn into nuts, or they're going to turn into maybe a seed that the bird's going to consume. Again, I'll emphasize the layering, and you'll even see a little line drawing on this because different birds, different pollinators live at different levels, and everyone occupies a niche. And also, very important, don't prune the plants. First of all, if you're pruning, you're going to be taking off the buds that are going to become flowers that are also going to turn into the berries or the fruits that the birds and other wildlife are going to consume. So, what's so special about where we live? Where do our winter migrators come from? Well, we're fortunate enough to be here in South Florida, and we're right smack dab in the middle of the flyover. Here we go. The Eastern Atlantic flyover, and sometimes you can get from other areas east of the Rocky Mountains that will be flying down. And this is an example of the information you'll find following the links for each bird that we're going to explore. It's going to give you this graphic, and the dark red will show you where this bird would breed. So in this particular case, this migrator doesn't breed in Florida. It's actually an uncommon visitor to Florida. It may be that it only comes down this far and occasionally comes this far, or perhaps it goes further south. And you can click on and explore more from each link. Also, you'll want to explore the feature where you can hear the call, the sounds that each of these birds make. So the birds we're going to look at today, these are actually some of the more common birds that you could expect. These are birds that I would regularly see when I lived in Miami Springs. And they're also birds that we see here at the Extension office, at my home. We see these in the Fruit and Spice Park and over at Castello Hammock on a regular basis. So first of all, the guide for more information on how big these birds are, what they like, what they feed their young, etc., where they migrate to and from, can be found on the Guide to North American Birds, Audubon's website. And this is a phenomenal website resource, and we highly urge you to explore that. We're going to give you more information on where to see what we talk about today. So this is what happens when you go to audubon.org bird guide, and I put in our region here, and still you get a very long list. It's going to have many more birds that than you can see in Miami-Dade County. And it's also going to have shorebirds, which you would have to go to a coastal location to see in most cases. But this is a good place to start. Here's some UF IFAS, some of our extension resources. This is birds in the burbs. Do migratory birds prefer urban forest fragments or residential yards? There's some birds that have adapted very readily to our residential yards, but there are also some birds who are not doing well that need more range within an undisrupted habitat. So this was from a series by Mark Hostetler, and he's from the UF IFAS Department of Wildlife Ecology and Conservation, WEC, and he has quite a few excellent presentations. There's lots of information on here: bird monitoring projects for youth, bird feeder selection, bird's eye view, how the birds select, and then we go on to cavity nesting. Lots of great information, and it's all written in an easy to read format and easy to access. And this appears in the Xerces Society publication on building habitat for native bees. It's actually, I believe, from the U.S. Forest Service, and this was looking at what type of habitat you want to create for our native bees. This works for our birds too, because you want that leveling or various layers of different heights and types of plants all that are right for that specific spot. So what's next? This is Audubon's Native Plants Database, and I can't say enough about the connection between all of our pollinators for their nectar resources and for their larval host plants, which sometimes is only one or two plants, and the fruit and the nuts resources for birds. So Audubon does list of native plants, but again, if I haven't already said this, when you look at something that's for, say it's for the southeast area of the United States, it's not dialed in tight enough for Miami-Dade County or Monroe or even Broward. We need to get much tighter in the plant species range, and for that you need to go to the Institute for Regional Conservation's website. Bird Friendly Gardening Guide. So another resource. It's maybe like maybe it's a 7 or 8 minute read to just go through these and come back and earmark some of the things that you want to save so you can revisit. Anyhow, I'm still into the birds for everything, and one of the things you can do, there are plenty of birds that will come to a feeder. There are birds that are here all year that you can entice to your feeder, and you want to look at who will come, what type of feeder, and ways to make that feeder safe. So first of all, what do you want to put in the feeder? One thing for sure, sunflowers are highly attractive to quite a few birds here. The doves will go to the mixed wild bird feed, and they like to eat it off the ground, so be careful if there are any cats in the neighborhoods. Doves are like sitting ducks. They feed from the ground. Blue jays and cardinals are going to be very cautious about hopping down, and they love sunflowers. If they have easy access to a feeder full of sunflowers, they can just eat all of that up within a day. Peanuts, I don't really plant those, but we don't have crows. Those might be good for squirrels, but I also want to make sure I don't order anything with corn, and I want to make sure that I've got a good mix, and we'll look at a few other things here you need to consider. But if you follow up on this resource, you can find out the pros and cons. So feeders. I had feeders like this, and I had another type of feeder that looks like a barn as well, and it was just getting emptied out by some of the birds. Well, this one, it says squirrel proof, but what it should also say, it's anything larger than a warbler, which would be like your painted buntings. A couple other little guys that are going to come to the feeders will trigger this to shut. So if a blue jay lands on this, it'll close access to the feed. But cardinals can land on it, so they can feed, and they're not as ferocious as the blue jays. They will actually eat all of the mix in this particular type of wild bird feed, and blue jays will come and they'll just throw the seed everywhere looking for the sunflower seeds. So they'll make a big mess. So if you're trying to design a better feeder, keep in mind, it needs protection from the elements. What size birds? What birds are you trying to feed? And is there any protection from the ground, from predators on the ground? So feeder locations, we want to protect from overhead predators, like these come down during the migratory season as well, as some of them are here all year long, but we just have more of them that come down during migratory season, both for the water and maybe because of temperatures. But we have osprey and we have hawks and falcons. Haven't seen any eagles here in our little community. I'm sure they're in the Everglades. But we also want to protect from cats, foxes, snakes, Can a cat jump up on a chair and then jump from there onto the bird feeder? So we want to make sure that we're following precautions for that. And on Gardening Solutions, which is, this website is the bomb, it talks about hummingbird feeders, and there's no need to put out hummingbird feeders here in South Florida. Plant the nectar plants, and then you don't need a feeder. And we have nectar all year long. I think hummingbird feeders, if you want to draw a concentration of hummingbirds, but you have to be so careful to make sure that this doesn't overheat and get contamination and botulism. And also you're crowding a lot of those hummingbirds, which are going to be in competition with each other, into a smaller space. So I think feeders are a lovely, novel idea, but I would plant some more nectar sources and make sure that they're not getting imitation nectar, they're not getting sugar water, they're getting the real nectar from the plants. Let's go through some of the really great plants for birds and the migratories and all of our birds that live year-round as well. There's about 4 pages of these, and when you get the PDF, again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can contact us and we'll send you a copy of the PDF. These are going to be hyperlinked. You can see they're going to regional conservation, except for a couple of them that are not native. But rather than give you a whole page on each of these, I want you to explore and go to these websites and read through and bookmark them. Maybe put them, make a PDF and load them into a folder you put on your computer, so you have your wish list of what you want to buy at the next native plant sale, or what you want to pick up from the next adopt-a-tree. So let's start with beautyberry. It's a shrub. Sometimes it can grow into a small tree form, and it has beautiful pale lavender flowers, and those purple berries are just savored by mockingbirds. They'll get territorial over this, but I have also seen the painted buntings on this feasting on those berries, as well as the Barbados cherry. I haven't seen the mockingbirds so much on Barbados cherry, but what I did for beautyberry is I made sure I planted it in several locations. So if the mockingbird wants, a couple of mockingbirds want to say, hey, this is mine, I'm going to chase you away, then there's more than enough planted around the landscape. And they're kind of an open field, beautiful when those berries are purple, love the flowers, all the pollinators are going to come to them. So they're a must-have pollinator and bird plant. Barbados cherry, this is a nice thick, it's a large shrub, really grows more as a shrub form than a tree form. This is growing over at the Fruit and Spice Park, and these cherries, quote unquote, are extremely high in vitamin C. This is not native, tasty, savored by quite a few birds, and there's nothing more spectacular than seeing a cardinal or a male painted bunting perched in there ready to snag one of those red berries. Quite colorful. So another great to have in the landscape is wild coffee. And no, you wouldn't want to use this to make your own coffee, but it's there for the birds and the beautiful white flowers that are going to attract pollinators. And I even saw, as it was getting cooler one year, as we were transitioning into winter, I saw the white peacock butterflies were roosting inside this just for protection. So that was definitely its cover for wildlife. Gumbo limbo. This plant, it can get large. It has many positive attributes. It's a larval host plant for one of our butterflies, but also it was On this plant that I saw at A.D. Barnes Park, a flock of cedar waxwings feasting on the ripe berries when we had Native Plant Day. Bahamas Strongback, I love this dainty flower, 5 petals. You'll notice that the flowers of native plants, they're a little smaller, they're delicate, they're rather ethereal. They haven't been hybridized to be big and bold, sort of, showy, kind of taking up all the space, but they still have their magnificent nectar qualities to them. More Dahoon hollies. This is our native holly, and the berries are red at winter time. So you could pick this. The leaves will stay green. The berries will stay on probably for a couple of weeks, and you can use this to decorate for the holidays. But it is a spectacular source of berries, and it also likes its feet wet in fresh water. So if you were doing a rain garden or a bioswale or a freshwater pond, this would be the perfect plant to line along the edge. Doesn't get too large. Follow the links and learn more. White ironwood, succulent, delicious berries, and those white flowers seem to be so fragrant. They're attracting pollinators from their fragrance, not from their color. Satin leaf, beautiful berries on this. And if you ever have the chance you're under a satin leaf tree and you look up, just feast in that coppery color, fuzzy copper color on the underside of the wings, and know that the birds are going to land there too and really enjoy it. Big fat black berries on lancewood. This is a kind of an unusual tree. I implore you to discover more about it, so visit the site. Here we go, bird pepper. Boy, these peppers are so hot, you'd feel like the top of your head is coming off, but for some reason the birds like them too. They may be eating them when they're green rather than red when they're at their hottest, but this is an annual. It will reseed, but it's also a native. You can also save some of the seeds to replant. Lignum vitae, they'll go for those beautiful seeds. All of the stoppers have fragrant flowers. Well, the white stopper, people say it smells like skunk. To me, that indicates that I'm in a wild area, and I actually like the smell of it because it means I'm out in the wild. I'm in the woods, away from civilization. It smells like skunk, yeah, as long as it doesn't stay with me. But they all have fragrant white flowers and berries. Some grow faster than others, so what you want to do is explore which stopper is going to be right for you. Red mulberry, you can eat these as well as the birds. And oh, I forgot to mention, the American beauty berry is also edible as well. But otherwise, be very careful consuming any of these. Make sure you check a very authoritative resource. Contact the extension hall, the extension service, and if Roger Hammer says they're edible, you should ask if they're palatable. Some of these might be edible but not taste very good, and even if they are edible, they have to be picked at the right time. So one thing that is definitely not edible, wild sage, beautiful purple berries, wax myrtle also, and firebush. Don't know if they're edible or not. This is also used as a larval host. By the way, wax myrtle is a larval host. But we do know that birds love these berries. And Florida privet, who knew it has these luscious purple berries on it? Most of the time I think we see this really trimmed as a shrub in landscapes. Allow it to bloom and to produce those berries. So finishing up here, we have cinnamon bark with multicolored berries, and the bark is used for the cinnamon flavor, not the berries. It's a native plant. And rouge plant, when you see the black-throated warbler, which the males are blue, we had a patch of rougeberry that we let grow here that was about 15 feet long by 5 feet deep. And one day at the beginning of migratory season, about 7 or 8 of them all just landed on this patch and started eating the berries. So we let this grow wherever it wants to, and we try to collect some of the little sprouts from it so that we can share with everybody else. So this is one plant in my landscape. It's here, and it's at home, and I brought it to the extension office. Again, right plant, right place, because this doesn't want to be in full sun. It's fire spike. It's the magenta, and it's actually a different species from the red fire spike. It's not native, but this is a true hummingbird magnet. And just in my yard, it grows really large, healthy leaves and blooms profusely in the wintertime. So it's one of those plants that likes to bloom in the dry season. So where can you get some of these plants? At our local adopted tree. And the last one, September 23rd, last one for this year at Dennis C. Moss, features, of course, some from fruit, grafted mango and soursop, but it also features 4 magnificent nectar and also berry plants. As a matter of fact, locust berry we're going to take a look at. Now keep in mind, if you miss adopted tree for this year, it will start back up in late May and usually run till September. It coincides with our rainy season. Very smart. We want to let Mother Nature water those trees in. So here's the locust berry. I broke this out so we could make just a feature. This is one, instead of doing this for every one of the plants. We want to get into the birds as well, but this is the locust berry. There is a push on because it is also a larval host for one of our threatened in decline butterflies, the Florida dusky wing. And Connect to Protect is promoting that we start including this in our landscapes. It's adaptable enough to grow in a wide range of habitats. So it is a larval host plant. So don't be upset if you see some leaves tied together with the silk that the caterpillar produces. It's part of Mother Nature. The plant's it's not going to get eaten down to a nub. You'll barely notice it. You'll be challenged to find those caterpillars, as a matter of fact. But it's going to have these flowers that change color as they age, and it's going to produce some very tasty berries for a lot of our birds. So this plant is just phenomenal. It's a win-win. Win. Plus, it's beautiful in the landscape. So these are some of the birds that you can find information on. This is off of Cornell's website. I love that it gives you just an overview of photos. And you can if you need a quick reference on, gee, what might that bird be? You can have a quick look here and go, was it this one or that one? And then you can click and explore further. So let's start with the featured birds, ruby-throated hummingbirds. These will arrive about the end of August, early September. And if you have enough nectar resources, because they sip nectar, they will stay with you until they migrate back up north. So they will also collect pollen from oak trees, and that's going to provide them some protein. So oak trees are a special source for pollinators and birds. You'll hear me talk about oak trees a couple of times, but make sure you have the space for large oak trees. So we also occasionally get the buff-bellied hummingbird, and I remember when this showed up at Castello Hammock, it was quite a stir. Everyone had to see this, a little larger than the ruby-throated and the rufous hummingbirds that we get at here in South Florida, and you can see lots of them at Castello Hammock because they have a couple of plants over there, not everything native, but not invasive either, that are just hummingbird magnets. So the minute you start to walk up to the office there, you can just hear them like squeaking and fussing at each other. Get out of my way. So do visit Castello Hammocks. Put that on your website for bird watching. This is a pine warbler on Gerber daisies, but a beautiful photograph of this in this is an example of, there's a variety of plants that you can plant. Just make sure, as I mentioned before, natives are going to be the best, but this is a good plant. I'm sure the pine warbler is going to be just feasting on little insects that might be in the true flower on these daisies. And make sure that the plants are not invasive. The golden rule is do no harm. So that's the gardener's landscape code. Palm warblers. Palm warblers and pine warblers. Pine warblers you're going to see more in pine rockland. Palm warblers you're going to see pretty much all over the landscape. And this is a goldenrod they're on, so they're probably collecting seed. This is a great plant to have in your landscape. It's also a favorite nectar source of monarchs and other large pollinator butterflies, but also there's goldenrods that grow in almost every habitat that we have here in South Florida. There's seaside, there's pine rockland, there's one that grows. I have 3 different kinds. I'm trying to keep them all separate so they don't cross. But these guys are acrobats. They will just flit and run and feast, and they travel. Birds of a feather flock together. They do travel together. I believe most of our migratory birds do. I'm sure there are exceptions. There's always exceptions, but I'll tell you the ones that this one definitely arrives as a flock. And to me, it seems to zigzag back and forth, or maybe not all of them come at once, because it seems like every time we have a little bit of a cold front pushing through, I see more of these announcing the arrival of that cold front. So when you see those, yay, cool weather is coming. Here is the painted bunting, and this is the gorgeous male. I will say that every photo I see of the male looks almost a bit garish. The colors are so pronounced, but when you see this in a natural habitat or in your yard, the colors just all work. First of all, their breasts are more like a deep cardinal red. I think this has been lightened up just to show more of the feature. They just are such rich colors. They look right without being overdone, if that makes any sense. And the males sing to the females. So unfortunately, the males are hunted and captured because they are one of the most beautiful songbirds, and people want to put them in a cage. So that's not healthy for the bird, and it is illegal. We need the males, the breeding pairs, to stay in place. I just don't think there's ever a comfortable situation for a bird in a cage. And I also have to note that, or share that, I think the female, well, she doesn't have all those bright colors, but she is just a very, very rich shades of green. Nothing lacking there either. Little ovenbird. I don't know if this one travels as a flock, but when I see this bird, I usually see at least 3 or 4. Although when they arrive, they seem to sort of scatter a little bit. This is a small bird, maybe a little bigger than our house sparrows, and just I love this patterned breast and the feature on the top of their head. You'll have to take a look at this to learn more. There you go, Audubon Field Guide ovenbird, and it's often seen very close to the ground, even walking on the ground. And I have to say that here at the extension office, I'm out there in the shade house or the demo garden cleaning or potting or doing something, and they do get used to me coming and going, and they become less shy, and they'll walk into the shrub, but they don't walk that fast. So I can get a good look at them, but when I invite someone else out to take a look at them, no, they're shy again. So I guess they just get used to me. So, loggerhead shrikes. Now, these are fledgling loggerhead shrikes. This is a much larger bird. It's a little bigger than the mockingbird, and I think it's the same bird family. And this is in a mango tree, so I don't believe that they, well, maybe they do nest here, but I think it's a little further north. This is one of the few birds that can consume a lubber grasshopper, but that's because they'll usually spike it on a barbed wire fence and let the toxins drain from them, because the lubber grasshoppers, which aren't native, they consume different lilies, which produce a toxin that make the grasshopper unpalatable to everything out there. So once you get these lubber grasshoppers, you better hope that you get a lot of loggerhead shrikes at the right time, or you'll be resorting to mechanical collection of them to keep them under control. They will just get more and more, but birds do a great job of collecting all types of insects. So although they may eat the berries and the seeds when they're down here for winter, when they're nesting, they're going to feed their young. They're going to feed them insects. So their young are brought up on protein. 90% of what they feed their little baby birds is an insect, and that's going to help keep everything under control. Don't worry too much about it's got one of your caterpillars. Everything in nature should balance out if we let it. If we don't intervene too much, we don't use pesticides, etc. The birds can be our keep the insects in check for us. So I have not seen an indigo bunting. This is the male. Of course, he's colorful, and the female kind of looks like a sparrow. So maybe I have seen a female, but a little bigger than a sparrow. However, there are folks in our office who have them in their yards, so they are here. They do arrive in South Florida, and this bird, as well as the painted buntings, will visit your bird feeders. Gray catbird, one of my favorites, a little larger than, or about the same size as a mockingbird, and just as inquisitive and friendly. Now, the catbird gets its name from the cat-like noise that it makes, and you'll also find that information on the Audubon website. But it has more than just one song. It also has a little quiet sort of whispering type noise. It's sort of like, and I can make that noise when I'm outside, and they will like fly over to go, what is this lady trying to say to us? And yeah, they make fun of me here in the office because I'm trying to talk to the birds, sort of an aging Snow White, but I just love them. I love the richness of the charcoal, the black on the top of the head. It's just a very, very rich charcoal gray, and it flips its tail and you'll see the red rump. And the males and the females are alike, so they're just they'll move in and they'll be curious. They'll almost flock around you when I go outside to work in the garden. Now, I forgot to mention that all of the photographs that I used were from Audubon's um, photography award. So all of these photos were from award-winning photographers off of Audubon's website. And this is the cedar waxwing, which travels together. By the way, the Catbird arrives as a group as well. But these guys are I see these in larger flocks. And when I see one, I'll see 30 or 40. You can also watch them fly. And here's a perfect example of their utilizing the bird bath and having a blast. So provide those water resources. And they make quite a racket when they're all together. And as I mentioned, I got a beautiful shot of them at A.D. Barnes one year. So when you get to see these, listen to the calls that they make, and because it's pretty distinct, you'll soon recognize this, so that every time you hear it, you go, oh, cedar waxwings, and you'll start to look for them. They are like velvety appearance, just gorgeous. And another, I love brown and I love those patterns. There isn't a color in nature that I don't love. And this is a very cool bird, a brown thrasher. This bird, I think, is here most of the year, but as with other birds that we've featured here, they're going to be more abundant as they move down from their more northern range in Florida and sort of congregate here in South Florida for the resources. Even if we don't have the cold weather, um, we might have more food sources in our landscapes than north. And of course, now we know that dry weather controls the growth of our plants as much as cold weather. So those resources tend to get scarce as we get more into dry season. Blue-gray gnatcatcher, be still my heart, sweetest little bird, flits through the trees, darting after insects, makes a mewling sound, and is not afraid of you, doesn't fly off, but won't stay because they're quickly attracted to an insect flying within its range of sight, and they're off after it. So really clearing all those little small insects like gnats and things like that out of the landscape. And here's that beautiful black-throated blue warbler that I saw in abundance here in the extension, and there must have been at least 4 males because, wow, my eye was immediately drawn to those. And the female is quite attractive too. You can see almost like a tinge of turquoise in the wings, a little bluish hint. And I will tell you that every time we do a presentation for the public, the first time we're creating something, we learn because we're digging deep on the resources to bring you the best information there is. And I have seen the female black-throated blue warbler in the landscape and really tried to identify it and been stumped by it, not realizing until I put this presentation together that it was the female. So she's pretty too. So, little insect feeders and berry eaters, I've seen them lower but not on the ground. There you go. So they're quite common here in South Florida, or are uncommon here in this far south. So this photo, yes, it's a award-winning photographer, but this the black and white warbler is way more beautiful than the photo shows. I think it's just showing a little like resting, but what you don't realize is this bird likes to flit. I see this in the oak trees in my yard constantly, and just the filtering of the light through the the leaves hitting this sharp contrast of black and white. There's a beautiful interplay of those colors and patterns in there, feasting on insects. Thank you for doing that job for us. One of the many uh, wildlife that just will live out in larger trees like oak trees. And also I'll see them in the mango and the meme, any place where there's insects to be feasted on. There you go, a couple of more interesting photos. Um, but I think you have to see this bird in motion to really appreciate the patterns and its true beauty. And American redstart, again, a little difference between the male and the female. And this bird, one of the interesting things that it does, first of all, it's going to be gleaming insects in thickets that are not too high, but it flashes that tail fan constantly as it's flitting around. You'll see the tail come up and spread, and that's quite interesting. It usually arrives pretty early and doesn't seem to stay. It might rove in my yard, but it'll come back and there'll be more, and then seems to, maybe it's going to the neighbor's yard, but it's pretty constant until it's time for everybody to go home to wherever they migrated from. So we also get more birds of prey. And the American kestrel, it's the smallest of our falcons. It has a distinct call, which I've learned to recognize at a very young age. And whenever I hear it, I start to look for them and look for their roosting spots. And I like to watch them as they swoop down. The kestrel will fly during the day as well. And it'll eat quite a few things, but it'll catch mice if it can. But it's an opportunistic feeder on mostly things that are protein. So it will feast on other birds as well, and it'll go after lizards. So these are more of the resources which we've highlighted. Tropical Audubon. This is from their website. Just put this together for everybody to have a look. And regional conservation is on here, and this is actually off their website. So a lot of us use regional conservation as our go-to source for native plant information. And be sure to check their website, because we have bird-friendly gardening July 15th. That was this year. Watch for it next year. And also, I think it's the first weekend in June, they have a native plant sale. I always pick up some awesome plants there every year. And volunteer for those bird-friendly gardening days. You can learn so much while you're volunteering. And look, you can start to see the richer shades of charcoal in there. You're going to see the birds, and you're going to be working with other volunteers, some of whom are experts, and they may be talking and sharing their information. No better way to learn more about something than to volunteer, because you'll get all levels of expertise in there while you're all helping together. So what should you do? This is important. If you see an injured, sick, or orphaned birds, do nothing. Do not try to force feed. And if it survives, you have to be a little tough, because if you pick up a baby bird and try to attempt to put it back in the nest, it's probably not going to be accepted by the mother. And it's had a shock, and they're difficult to nurse back from that. Instead, what we encourage you to do is call or visit the websites of these local resources and ask them what to do. And if you are trying to take an injured bird in, because Pelican Harbor Seabird Station does do take in injured birds and rehabilitate them and release them if it's feasible. Make sure you call, make sure they're there and that they have space. So I know we think we're doing nature space, but we want to avoid contact. Maybe if there's a cat around, you could shoo the cat away. And a lot of times the baby birds, they'll just hide out really well. If they're going to survive, if they're large enough to survive, then they're going to get smart and hide out. And if not, it's a way of nature. It's unfortunate sometimes. Sorry, but you can do more harm than good. So hands off. And here's a 440 species of birds checklist in case you want to start, in case you really get bit by bird fever. And this is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, your online guide to bird watching.